I'm Chad Stebbins from the Institute of International Studies, and I'd like to welcome you to this presentation about Joseph Bombardier, the story of the inventor and his legacy. We have also several people joining us by Zoom this morning. Of course, Bombardier is most known for the invention of the snowmobile, which we'll hear quite a bit about today. I'd like to welcome our presenter, Sophie Simon, who has a delightful French-Canadian accent, as you will soon discover. Sophie is a recently graduated archivist who has been working at the Bombardier Museum of Ingenuity in Quebec for about 2 years. Her work at the museum is dedicated to the care of the collections and the promotion of Joseph Armand Bombardier's life and legacy. She assists with public research requests, produces content for social media, and participates in various events at the museum, which has had more than 1 million visitors since it opened in 1971. So let us bring on Sophie Simon for her presentation about Joseph Bombardier.
Like you said, I'm the archivist at the Musée de l'Ingéniosité J. Armand Bombardier. So we are located in Valcourt. So Valcourt is the village where Joseph Armand was born and where everything started, basically. And we are still very close to the BRP plant today. As an archivist, I have many tasks at the museum. Most of it is actually being in contact with the public. So private collector would often reach us to have some info on the vintage snowmobiles, and so we try to help people restore antique. That's something that we do also. And with all the research I do for work, we often produce exhibition content for social media. It's pretty everything I can. So I will share my screen. But obviously, the history is about 100 years long. So today, I won't be able to go in the full extent of every topic I would like to. So we will focus on the first half would be on Joseph Armand Bombardier from 1907 to 64. And on the second half, we will talk about the evolution of Bombardier Inc. Throughout the rail transportation, the aerospace, and recreational product. And with the time we have left at the end, I can answer some questions as well. So it all started in 1907 when Joseph Armand is born in Valcourt. So at the time, it's a very small village in the eastern township, and he is the eldest of a family of 10. So on the picture, he's the tall one at the back. And unfortunately, 4 of his brother and sister will die under the age of 25. His father, Alfred Bombardier, he started as a farmer and later will own the general store in Valcourt. So really from the start, Joseph Armand had a passion for everything mechanical. So around the age of 13, he was making toys with parts from clockworks, sewing machine, and even guns. And to finance his hobby, he served mass on Sundays to get some pocket money. And so in 1922, he was 15 years old, and that's when his talent in mechanics is really confirmed. He built what we call the infernal machine. So it all started because Joseph Armand had a habit, you see, of dismantling and reassembling the family car, and that was pretty annoying for his father, Alfred. So he gave his son an old Ford car that, it was a total loss, so he just thought that he would have an engine to play with. And so in 1922, Joseph Armand and one of his brothers, Leopold, they fixed the engine and they mounted on a sled runner and they put a wooden propeller at the back. So that was a 2-man vehicle So Joseph Armand was at the back for switching the gears, and Leopold was at the front. He steered the vehicle by pulling ropes that were attached to the front ski. So it is said that they have run this machine for about a mile, and of course the father was angry because that was so dangerous, and they quickly dismantled it. At those times, Joseph Armand was a student in a private Catholic school. Alfred really wanted his son to become a priest. At the time, it was a tradition in French-Canadian families. However, Joseph Armand, he was not a bad student, but he had absolute no interest in studies. He only wanted to become a mechanic. So with the permission of his father, he had a little job in 1924 in a small garage. And so he was a fast learner, and while he was working full-time over there, he also took maid classes on electrical engineering, mechanics, and also English. And really, while he was working there, he realized that winter transportation is a problematic because nothing was available for the countryside during winter, and mechanics did not have work to do as well. On the summer of 1925, he went to Montreal to look for work. As you can imagine, he was not very taken seriously because he was so young and did not have a lot of experience. And so after many refusals, he went to a small garage, and over there, the owner thought he would make a joke on him and, ask him to fix that junk over there, and that he would give a job if he could do it. Obviously, he thought that it was a lost cause. So Joseph Armand got to work, and after half a day, he did fix it. So it amazed everyone at the time, and that's how he started to work in the city. He did also continue to go to school. In the evenings, the Ford company was doing mechanics and also electrical courses. After a bit, he returned to Valcourt in 1926. He wanted to open his own garage. And so with the help of his father and few neighbors, he did build his workshop that he called Le Garage Bombardier. He was only 19 years old at the time. Over there, he would sell gasoline, repair farm machinery, sold used car, everything that he could do. So it's very busy work, 14 hours a day, but still on the winter, he is unemployed. And he took advantage of that off-season to develop several prototypes that could potentially travel on snow. And so over a period of about 10 years, he built more than a dozen and slowly approaching something efficient enough. And so side note, for his little garage, he did build his own water turbine to produce electricity and also to run the water for the garage. In 1929, he married Yvonne Labrec, and they quickly had two boys, Germain and Yvon, the youngest. In January 1934, Yvon had died at almost 3 years old. And so the big myth will tell you that it was because a heavy snowstorm was raging outside, and the nearest hospital was about 30 miles from Valcourt, so they could not get the son in time to save him. And that's why he wanted to build a winter vehicle. And it is part of it true that his son's death really impacted him, but we already knew that he was building prototype before that. So it's really a combination of factors that motivate him to build something to circulate in the winter. And so in order to do that, there was three major problems: the weight distribution, the drive, and the suspension of the vehicle. In 1935, he came up with something to solve those problems. So he did put the engine at the back of the vehicle, so that would reduce the weight on the front skis. And he came up with the sprocket wheel and traction system. So it is basically a toothed gear wheel covered in rubber that drove a flexible track. The track is made with two rubber bands and connected with steel cross pieces. And so that systems really allow the snow to be evacuated and then provide greater traction for that. And so that's when he knew he had something working on. He did patent the system, and so with that, he commercialized the first vehicle, exclusively made for driving on snow, the B7 snowmobile. So it's B for Bombardier and 7 passenger. And so, however, Joseph Armand is not the only one to have made a snowmobile, but what is unique to him is that the design he had was really reliable and could be mass-produced, and also the sprocket wheel and traction was patented, so it was unique to him. In 1937, he changed the name of his little garage and called it Bombardier Snowmobile. And when he started, he did not have a lot of money to promote the vehicle. So what he would do, he relied on word to ears and demonstration. So he started to tour the province of Quebec with the B7. And what he would typically do is to park in front of local newspaper in order to attract attention. And so oftentimes after that, journalists would produce articles about him. But even that, when later on he had money, he never believed in publicity. He really thought that was a futile expense. So at the time, a snowmobile was sold about for $1,000. So today, that would be close to 20K. So it is quite a significant sum for people. The leaflets and the brochure were sent to more targeted audience, such as a doctor or priest. And sometimes the village would collectively buy one, and it would be used, for everything: school buses, taxi, or ambulance. And so in 1937, only about 12 snowmobiles were produced, but even then, it was not enough to meet the public demands. And so it could not make a lot because only a few seasonal employees were with him at the time. The first production is modest, obviously, but almost double each year after that. Already in 1931, the small workshop is not big enough to accommodate the production. So in 1940, he started to build a new factory that inaugurates in January 41, and that new factory can produce 200 vehicles per year. And quick side note, the first factory is still here today in Valco, and we can still see it today. BRP use it for their head offices. And so Bombardier really wants to remain competitive with his vehicle, so he's constantly working on improvement. One big thing with the B7 were the wheels were wooden spoke, and so snow jammed into them, and that was a problem. So what Joseph Armand wanted is to make a solid steel wheel. So he calls on few suppliers to have one, but none could make it because it was either too complicated or too expensive to produce. And so Bombardier has a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. And so he decided to work on a hydraulic press to make his own steel wheel. So, throughout his whole life, self-sufficiency will be really a priority and a business strategy. And so with his new steel wheel, he produced a new model the famous B-12 in 1941. So this time, 12 passenger. Everything is going well, but then the Second World War is happening. It's only about 1941 that Valcourt started to feel the effect of it. So the Canadian government at the time had issued a regulation concerning the manufacturing of motorized vehicles. And so Joseph Armand did not have access to engine anymore. In those war times, only civilians with special permit could either produce or buy motorized vehicle. And so he was keen to protect his factory and to protect the job for his employee. So what he did was to call the Canadian Armed Force. He wanted to present his snowmobile. So a few specialists come over in Valcourt and they conduct some tests on the B7 and the B12. They did ask Joseph Armand to produce a vehicle able to transport troops in Europe. And that's when the B1 snowmobile came up. It's mainly the same thing as a B12, but bigger and larger. And this time it has only 8 passenger capacity. So the Army asked him to produce 130 vehicles, but just in 4 months. So that was quite a challenge because the factory could only make 200, but for the whole year. So what he did, he decided to split the production with a subcontracted plant in Montreal and then in Valcourt. But again, it's really essential for him to keep the main production in Valcourt. In 43, the Army asked him again to produce a vehicle. So this time they wanted something full track with some armor. He came up with the khaki prototype. So this one has a much better ground contact and mobility. And with that one, he made the Mark I. So it's a small tracked vehicle. It is used mostly for reconnaissance, and it has only 2 passenger capacity. And this time, Ottawa has asked him to produce 1,800 vehicles for the British Army. And later on, they will work on the Mark I to produce the Mark II and the Mark III that we know as the Penguin. However, that being said, no vehicle would actually be used on the front line during the Second World War. And so during the wartime, Joseph Armand decided to officially incorporate in Valcourt under the name Bombardier Snowmobile Limited. And really that decision to incorporate in Valcourt and not Montreal is really confirmed to people that he wants to settle in Valcourt and that he wants to keep the job here. So on his board of directors, he had his brother to fill the roles. So everyone has their own special ability. So at the left of Joseph Armand, it's Alphonse Raymond. Alphonse Raymond was a salesman, and he's also the one who worked in 1970 to open up the first museum. He collected information and vehicle, and it's really because of him that we have a big collection today. Also on the right, you have Leopold. Leopold is a mechanic, and the youngest is Gérard, who is also an inventor like Joseph Armand. And we also have a woman on the board. And so to our knowledge, it is one of the rare French-Canadian company to have a woman on the board. Marie-Jeanne Dupol, she really is the right-hand woman of Joseph Armand. She is the secretary and treasurer, and she did also manage the daily operation when Joseph Armand was not available. And so the war is ending in 45. The snowmobile production resumed. A new model came up, the C18, so this time for Chrysler engine. Again, it's basically a B12, but much bigger this time. This one would be used mainly as a school buses. And so the demand continued to increase. They decided to build a new factory in 47. This one is much bigger, about 175 yards long, and it has a production capacity of 1,000 vehicles per year. This building is also standing today. It is now integrated inside the new BRP plant, but when you visit, you can still see some part of it. 47 still, they opened a research center in Kingsbury. So that is a small village about 12 miles from Valcourt. So really, it is a prosperity period for Bombardier. Again, it's going well, but something is coming up. It's the snowblower made by Arthur Sicard. So Sicard is contemporary to Joseph Armand, and he too has a dream to be able to drive during the winter. But instead of going over the snow, he wanted to remove it. And so the arrival of the snowblower really started the processing of snow removal in the whole province of Quebec. So that, and in 47, 48, there was a mild winter with not a lot of snow. And so the sale really started to drop. And so that preoccupies Joseph Armand because he really did not want to lay off workers. He doubled down on research. He tried anything to produce new product, but nothing was really working out. And so he started to get fatigue. And so his doctor really suggested a vacation in Florida, and he left with his wife for a few months. But in his absence, one of Joseph Armand's brother, Théophile, he was a farmer and he had problems with his Ferguson tractor. He was getting stuck constantly in the muddy fields outside, and so he went to the plant because he wanted help to have a solution for improved traction. So in Joseph Armand's absence, it is Gérard who worked on the tractor, and he came up with a great solution. So what he did was add to a sprocket wheel a suspension system in a track on each side of the tractor, and that really improved the traction. When Joseph Armand returned a couple of months later, he had patented the system, and he called it the TTA for tractor track attachment. He did have patent in 3 different countries for that system. So Canada, USA, and the UK. That product really allows the company to overcome the drop in the sale of snowmobile. It also opens Joseph Armand to try different markets other than snow transportation. So he tried to develop vehicles for the oil field in Windsor, Canada, and also for the forestry industry. So you can see here a couple of models, the truck narrow, the truck double, and the Bombardier truck. But at the end, not a lot of those vehicles would be produced because it was made for a too much targeted audience, so it could not sell in large quantity. In 51, he came up with 2 new models of the snowmobile, the R12 and R18. The letter R is because wheel in French start up with an R, because this vehicle could be used for season. You can change the front ski to make a wheel. And also, this one is made fully of steel instead of wood. So that's the 2 main improvement. And so also, according to our record, the R snowmobile is actually produced until 1981. again, as said before, Joseph Armand did have problem with his supplier because he always wanted something, you know, very specific that would be complicated or nobody knows how to make them. And so in 52, he decided that he would make his own rubber part. He designed a new vulcanizer, and that vulcanizer actually allows him to make a sprocket wheel entirely made of rubber, so they would be now unbreakable-ish. And that new vulcanizer allows him also to make endless track, so there wouldn't be no junction, and that would make them much more durable. So in 53, the Kingsbury Research Center became Rockland Accessories Limited, and from that point, that's where he would make all his rubber parts for the snowmobile. And it actually is son Germain who runs the Rocklands company. And so all these different improvements actually allow Joseph Armand to market his first all-track tractor, the Muskeg, in 1953. The Muskeg means marshland in First Nation language, and that one is actually practically waterproof and a very low ground pressure, so that means it can go to pretty much any terrain. And because of that, he really sells this product all over the world. And, you know, Joseph Armand really, for him, the Muskeg was his big success, you know, his source of pride. Again, because he wanted to be competitive, he wanted to be up to date, he adapted the Muskeg in many different models. In 54, he launched the J5 tractor, so J for junior and 5 feet. It is basically a small Muskeg. It is marketed as a logging machinery, but turns out the application are multiple. And this one will also be modified in different model. You know, Joseph Armand really wanted to accommodate the needs of his client. And today, the best known modification of the J5, it's the SW sidewalk. So for sidewalk snow removal, we can still see some of those SW today in different municipalities in Quebec. At the end of the 50s, you still have the forestry industry going big. And so Bombardier intensifies his research. He teams up with two men, Thomas Fraser and Rudy Witt from the Quebec North Shore Paper Company. And they had developed two prototypes, the BPU, so it's a processing unit for cutting trees, and the VFB, which is basically a muskeg that can cut the trees and bring them to the processing unit. He did have patent for both of them. However, it remained an experimental production. And it is the last industrial design that Joseph Armand would make, because, you know, from now on, his attention is focused on a much more small vehicle. You know, he never forgot the dream of making a small vehicle to travel on snow. But he had to put it aside because the elements for success were not available at the time. But in the 50s, things are changing. You know, first, the company is very prosperous, so that allows him to invest money in research and development. There's also a new engine on the market. It is small and powerful enough. It's the American Kohler. And also, Germain had developed a new small and flexible track all made of rubber. So with that in hands, in the fall of 58, Bombardier and his team, they built a first wooden prototype. It was nicknamed the Butterbox. It's basically a wooden square with two skis. And so a few tests is running, and they came up with a steel model that looks like the one on the picture. A quick side note, the first 4 snowmobiles are actually called Ski Dog, because Joseph Armand thought that it was meant to replace the dog sled. And the popular theory goes that it is because of a printing error that the G was replaced with an O. And actually, Joseph Armand liked it better that way because Skidoo, you can pronounce it as well in English and as in French. And so if in 59, he's ready to do the first test, he goes to a mission in the North Ontario, Lansdowne House. It is in the Nescaganta First Nation community, and he goes there because of his childhood friend is a priest over there. Him and the local community, they test the Skidoo over there. It is said that the first machine had run for like 24 hours straight and only stopping to refuel because people were liking so much. And so Joseph Armand is really satisfied with those tests. He returns home and now he launched the production. So the series production on the first year is only 225. In those years, a Skidoo is about 700 to 900 Canadian dollar. Today would be around maybe 57 US dollar. And so the craze was immediate and production became quickly exponential. In 62, Bombardier went to Austria with his wife. They are meeting with Rotax management because he wanted to have an exclusivity contract for the use of their engine on his Skidoo. After getting the contract, most of the model of 1963 would be equipped with the Rotax engine. Another big improvement in 63 is the introduction of fiberglass for the hood. At this point, steel will be completely abandoned. Again, he wanted to be self-sufficient, so he created a new company called Roski Limited, specializing in fiberglass. And that company was located in a village about 15 miles from Valcourt. It actually was still in operation until March 2024, unfortunately. So really, with the arrival of the Skidoo, it's a new sport, and it quickly gains momentum throughout the whole North America. However, Joseph Armand will not see the full success because he died on 1964 from cancer. So he was still pretty young. So after his death, it is Germain who took over at the company. He was the president, and in those times, the company had employed more than 400 employees. But only after 2 years, Germain had to leave the offices for health reasons, and so it is Laurent Baudouin who took over his place. The Bombardier family had chosen him because he was the one with the most qualification and also experiences in businesses. So Laurent and Claire Bombardier had met at the University of Sherbrooke when they were both studying accounting. They quickly married in 1959. But it's only in 63 that Laurent had agreed to move to Valcourt to work with his father-in-law. In 64, he started as a general manager, and when Germain left, he became the president. So one of the first achievements that Laurent made was actually the revamp of the Skidoo. It is start with a meeting between Anselme Lapointe and Laurent Baudouin. So Sam Lapointe was actually an interior decorator who had worked on Laurent Baudouin's home. A friendship had developed between the two men. And, Sam told Laurent that the skidoo were pretty fun to drive, but not attractive. And so Laurent had challenged him to produce a beautiful design. So a few months later, Sam presented what it is now the classical vintage look, the 76 Olympic. The design was approved except for the color. He proposed blue actually, but then the family had chosen to keep the yellow. Already at this point, yellow was associated with the brand, so they did not want it to change it. And so a quick fun fact on the side, the Bombardier family have actually forbid people to publish this picture with the blue color. So they kept it as a closed secret, for almost 60 years. Sam Lapointe would be linked to Bombardier all his life. He started as a consultant, and later he was the director of the design center. And today, it is still in the family because it's his son, Denis Lapointe, who runs the BRP Design Center. In 1967, the company names is changed. They are dropping snowmobile to adopt Bombardier Limited. So Laurent Baudouin chose vertical integration as a business strategy. He was like his father-in-law. He wanted to be self-sufficient from supplier. So what he did was to actually acquire all the main company that produce a different part of the skidoo. And so the main one would be in 1966, they bought the Walker Manufacturing Company. So it was a clothing manufacturer, and they renamed it Skidoo Sport Limited. In 1968, they bought Plastic La Salle, who made the plastic part, and Ville-Marie Rembourrage, who are specializing in seats. In 1970, they actually bought Rotax for their engine. With Rotax came a small company, Loaner Work. It's a train manufacturer, and they are making the starter box for the skidoos. You also have Plaquage Automatique Drummond, who are making chrome and zinc plating, and Jarry Precision, who make high precision mechanic parts of the skidoos. In 1971, another big acquisition is Les Industries Bouchard. So it's a Quebec competitor who were making the motoski brand. Even after the acquisition, Bombardier will keep producing motoski about 1985. So all of those acquisitions allows Bombardier to diversify the product range. They begin with the introduction of the Sea-Doo watercraft in 1968. It was not a success as they thought it would be because many technical problems were happening. So corrosion, overheating, and sometimes fire would happen. And so they stopped the production, and the Sea-Doo will actually come back only in 1988. In 1969, they listed the company on the Toronto and Montreal Stock Exchange. In 1972, they create a new division. It is the Can-Am motorcycle. They will be produced in Valcourt until 1982. The production will then be moved to Great Britain and assembled by a contractor, the Armstrong Company. The last Can-Am model would be for the season 1987. And in 1973, it is the assembly of the 1 million Skidoo snowmobile and also the 20,000 industrial vehicle. So that being said, 1973 is a rough year because of the oil crisis. So you will excuse my French clip article. It is a local newspaper, so it doesn't exist in English, sorry. 73, you will see a drastic increase in demand in a drop in production. So that would raise the gasoline price. And so the recreational industry was really suffering, and sale will drop. So, at the end of the 70s, there was only a few handful of snowmobile manufacturers that would be left. It is the various subsidiaries of Bombardier that allows them to survive that crisis. They would try to design new product and take on as many contracts as they can. They would try furniture, canoes, or sailboats. A famous contract was the seats for the Olympic Stadium in the Montreal 1976 Summer Games. But actually, what saved Bombardier was the entry into public transportation. So it does start in the early 70s when the mayor of Montreal, Jean Drapeau, wanted to expand the subway system in times for the 76 Olympics. He approached Laurent Baudouin asking if he wanted to bid on the contract. But, Baudouin dismissed it at first. We never make train at Bombardier. We don't have the expertise. And so after that, he remembered that small subsidiary company, Loaner Work, that was acquired at the same time of Rotax. And over there, they put in place a team and submit. And it turned out that they actually did won the contract. And so Bombardier decided to use the motoski plant to assemble the subway vehicle. So it is a pneumatic model. However, only the bogie is assembled in Valcourt, and the whole thing is finished at the other factory. So the contract was for a total of 423 cars delivered for the Olympic Games. So that's the start of the big contract for Bombardier. In 78, they moved the head offices in Montreal, and they changed the name again for Bombardier Incorporated. The first American contract is the Chicago commuter train in 1977. So in this period, many Canadian companies had one major contract, and it actually did concern the American administration. So they adopted the Buy America Act in 78. So that act actually requires that foreign manufacturer of public transportation equipment is to produce at least 60% of the parts on the American territory, and the assembly must be done completely on U.S. ground. So Bombardier really quickly solved that problem. He built a factory in Vermont in 1980. And that's allowed them to actually win another big contract in 1982. And it is called the contract of the century. So at the time, it was for a value of $1 billion Canadian dollar. So the largest ever signed by a Canadian company at this point. So that was for the New York subway system for a total of 825 train cars. So even though they keep winning big contract in the US, they will continue the expansion in the rail transportation, but mostly in Europe. After that, they decided to enter the aerospace. So it's beginning in 1986 with the acquisition of Canadair. So Canadair is a Canadian company starting in 1944, who had many financial problems in the 60s, and even so that the Canadian government had bought it in 74. And so even that, they were losing money because of the plane, the Challenger, and the Canadian Prime Minister of the time, Brian Mulroney, he decided to sell it to Bombardier for an actual very low price. The second acquisition came up in '89. It's the Short Brothers company from Northern Ireland. This company is actually the same one that manufactured biplanes for the Wright brother in 1909. You have the third company, Learjet, in 1990. So this is a company based in Wichita, Kansas, known for the business jet. And the last big acquisition would be the Avenant in 1992. They are making Bosch planes and a jet called the Dash model. So again, Bombardier proceed by acquisition to expand the field of expertise and to obtain the new technology. And when subsidiaries are no longer useful, they sold them. So during the 90s and the 2000s, really a lot is happening. So I will try to give you a quick highlights. 88, as I said, the Sea-Doo is coming back. In 1993, they are making the 2 millionth Ski-Doos, and they had matched it 20 years after the first one. In 1994, sorry. They launched the first Ski-Doo boat, so it's a speedster propelled by jets. Oops, sorry about that. In that same years, they actually acquire AMT Marines and Celebrity Boats. In 1996, they are trying an electrical vehicle. It's called the NEV, for Neighborhood Electric Vehicle. It was a small 2-seat, designed only for short distances, gated community or golf carts. And it could only reach 25 miles. But I mean, maybe it was too early for electric vehicle because they produced it only for 2 years because the sales did not match up the expectation. In 98, they entered the ATV market with a Trackster. In 2001, they acquired the Outboard Marine Company, so they are making the Evinrude and Johnson outboard motor. And they also acquire Adtrans. It is a train manufacturer. And so with that acquisition, in 2001, Bombardier is becoming the #1 company in transportation, really in all the division combined. 2002, there's a new thing coming up. It's a new platform called the REV, for Revolution. So this platform gives a new driving position for the Ski-Doos. It's much more comfort and ergonomics. It's more of a sports drive. And so that's really what makes Ski-Doo the #1. They come back on the first position on the chart, and they have been #1 ever since. So it looks to be good, but on the September 11, 2001, there's attack on the World Trade Center, and that really collapsed the market, and especially in the aeronautic industry. And so Bombardier was having financial difficulty. In 2002, they decided to appoint Paul Tellier as president and CEO. And he's the one who decided to sell the recreational product division. So it had made quite the scandal in Valcourt, and they announced the sale in April 2003, and the sale was made on December of the years. The buyer is a group of investors. So you have Bain Capital, la Caisse de dépôt et placement du Québec, and the Bombardier Group. So the Bombardier Group is a legal representation of Bombardier's families and Baudouin's families. The new company will be called BRP, for Bombardier Recreational Product. In 2004, they decided to set up in the first Bombardier's factory. They also revealed the new logo for the company. So it is a sprocket wheel in tribute to Joseph Armand's invention. And they appointed José Boisjoli as president and general manager of the company. And he is still in office today. So a lot of things is going on for BRP. In 2006, they bring back the Can-Am brand, but this time they would be used for the ETVs. In 2007, it's the 1 millionth Sea-Doo. That same year, they launched a new vehicle unseen before. It's called the Can-Am Spyder Roadster. So it's a 3-wheel vehicle. And that's the first that BRP made that could go on the roads. On September 2008, they inaugurate the Laurent Baudouin Design and Innovation Center in Valcourt. In 2010, they are making a side-by-side vehicle. So they start with 2-seater and then 4-seaters. In 2013, they became a public company by listing on the Toronto Exchange. But that same year, 2013, it's actually the 3 millionth Ski-Doo. And so it is again matched day to day, 40 years after the first one. They launched a new vehicle in 2018. The Riker. So Riker is basically the Spyder's little brother. And actually, the next big thing is the introduction of the electrical snowmobile. You have 2 models, so the Grand Touring for North America and the Lynx Adventure for Europe. At this point, it is very, very early stages, and so this Ski-Doo is only designed for short rides. We estimate the battery life to be only 30 miles. So it's still early stage to go on. In that same inspiration, they also are bringing back the Can-Am motorcycle with 2 models, the Origin and the Pulse, and both of them will also be electric. It's because in a recent communique, BRP has actually announced a goal in terms of green development for 2035. They actually want to make at least 1 electric vehicle per division, and they want to have 50% of the sales in electric vehicle. So they really are focusing research on that aspect. The nautical division is also going strong. Even the Sea-Doo is still going on. In 2018, they acquire Alumacraft. So it's a company who produce fishing boats. They also acquire the Manitou company, who are making pontoons. In 2019, they acquired Telwater, another fishing boats company. So with that combined, in 2021, they released a BRP pontoon line. And again, with their green development goals, they are announcing an electric Sea-Doo for 2026. If we go back a little bit, after the sale of the recreational division, Bombardier will be focusing on aviation and rail transportation. Shortly after the sale, Laurent will return to his position as CEO up until 2008, where he would leave his position to his son, Pierre Baudouin. So in the mid-2000s, Bombardier had launched a new program with a new aircraft, a new design. We know it as the C series. Initially, the flight went well, but even though it was an initial success, the sale had not met the expectation. And so they were again in a financial crisis a bit. So they tried to make a big restructuration in 2015. They wanted to get the C series back on track. So they appointed Alain Bellemare as a CEO. At this point, Laurent Baudouin left the position in Bombardier Aéronautique, but also on the board of BRP. Still, the aeronautic division is not going well, so they decided to sell most of the aircraft model between 2018 and 2020. So they are trying to focus on small private business jet. The company will be renamed Bombardier Aviation in 2019. They will sell the Bombardier Transportation, that's the rail transportation division, in 2020. And that year, Eric Martel will be the new CEO. And from this point, they will focus on planes, and the actual flagship planes today, it's the Global Express, which is also a 100% design from Bombardier. And it does seem now to be going well enough. And so, as we can see, I went a little bit quickly, but those many different Bombardier companies really went under major change throughout the times. Most of the subsidiaries founded or acquired between the 60s and 70s are still in operation under new names. So you have Camso. It is originated in the Rocklands accessories. They are making tires and rubber track today. It has been independent since 1982, and it is located in a small town about 2 driving hours from Montreal. You also have Inotex, formerly the Ski-Doo Sport Limited, and today they are making fireproof clothing. I haven't really talked about the development of the industrial division because of the time restriction. However, they did sell the industrial design in the 90s to a company called Camoplast. So Camoplast was a merge between Rockland Accessories, Ski-Doo Sport, and Plastic La Salle, back in the late 70s. And in the early 2000s, a company bought again Camoplast. It's called Prinut. They are making industrial snow removal equipment, such as the SW50. And, like I said at the beginning, the SW is actually a pretty direct descent of the Joseph Hamas design. And obviously, just like I just said, Bombardier Transport was sold to Alstom in 2021, but this is still active in Saint-Bruno, close to Montreal. And, of course, BRP is still the number one, still going strong, and they are still trying to keep the legacies going on in the snowmobile. And they kept that innovation spirit again. So I think that would be it. Like I said, it's a quick overlook, but I hope you had enjoyed it.